Hello everyone, I'm Anna Fisher. I have a little notebook here, which is all of the things that I want to make videos out of, or at least all the things I've thought of so far, and I was looking through it going, oh my god, what am I going to do for this week? And the first option that I wrote back in August, yes, was a video about Caligula and Henry VII. And of course I went, no, not Henry VII, Henry VIII. And I went, I know what that's about. I know what that's about. It's about the fact that both Caligula and Henry VIII followed on these sour, dour, yes, hello Mira, this has been, yes, I love you, they followed on these sour, dour monarchs that people didn't like. And then they were the young, bright, charismatic things that they were, and everybody loved them. And then things started going wrong. And right around when things started to go wrong, they each had a really catastrophic illness. And in both cases, chroniclers have blamed that catastrophic illness for a change in personality that led to them becoming the terrible tyrants we now remember them as. And I think we should be skeptical of this narrative. And I want to talk about why. First off, Caligula. Caligula, whose nickname means little boots or bootsy, bootykins, was actually named Gaius. Gaius, oh god, I don't remember it, but he was the son of two very popular Romans, Agrippina the Elder, and Germanicus. And Agrippina the Elder was either granddaughter, I think she was the granddaughter of Augustus. And her beloved husband was descended from Livia, who was, of course, Augustus's wife, who they didn't have any living children together, who were boys that he could, give the country to. But Augustus had children and Livia had children, and the Julio-Claudian dynasty, which was the first Roman dynasty, were the children of either Augustus or Livia, depending on the ruler. So Tiberius, who was the first Roman emperor after Augustus, was the son of Livia, so he was Augustus's stepson. So Tiberius, he was emperor, but he wasn't the son of a god. He wasn't descended from the god that was Augustus, and Augustus had been declared a god, right? So he had not necessarily a legitimacy issue, but he wasn't necessarily the best liked. The Romans weren't necessarily like, yeah, we have an emperor. It was, yeah, we have Tiberius. So then he was also kind of a dour person, and things were not very fun. And then he retired to Capri and tried to rule Rome from Capri, and he was just not, there were a number of reasons why he wasn't anyone's favorite emperor. But he had a very, very popular family member in the form of Germanicus, who I believe was his nephew. My Julio-Claudian history is not the best. But Germanicus was a very popular Roman general, and his wife, Agrippina the Elder, was both descended from Augustus and also like the purest embodiment of Roman womanhood, at least as far as everyone was concerned. Whether she was or wasn't, again, chroniclers are always a problem here. And, the two of them were both very popular. And then, Germanicus died and left his wife and young children. And Agrippina the Elder never married again. We have evidence that says, chronicler evidence that says that she wanted to marry again, but her uncle by marriage, Tiberius, refused to allow her to. And that, but still a widow who never remarried was sort of like the ultimate in pure Roman womanhood. A woman who was only ever married once, in spite of the fact that they had like a really liberal divorce law. This was still held up as like the purest woman. And Agrippina got a lot of that. She was treated as the purest woman. So her son came to the throne with a lot of sort of emotional social capital here. And he was just like treated like a rock god for large parts of the first part of his reign. And then he got sick. And after that, apparently, he started getting really nasty. But the problem is that we have a certain amount of evidence. We have people who met him when he was a prince, people who were a little bit more jaded during the early part of his reign, who talked about the fact that there was no one better to have as a servant and no one worse to be your master, that he was vindictive, that he was petty, that he was cruel, that he was sadistic, right from the start, before he became emperor, much less before he became ill. So why necessarily was he seen as so great? And then, why is it that people didn't say, oh, I was wrong, and they instead said, oh, he became awful after this illness? Because a lot of people feel the need to say I wasn't wrong, but to say he changed. I wasn't wrong about him. He became a different person. It's a way of shielding yourself from saying I made a mistake about him. He became bad. He wasn't bad when I first made my judgment on him that he was great and good and wonderful and I loved him. It allows you to feel betrayed instead of mistaken. And that's a powerful force. So a lot of chroniclers sort of embed that into what they write. A lot of historians will write that in. And historians who were hearing it from other people after the fact are going to write that in as what they were told, because that's how those people would articulate it. That doesn't necessarily mean it's true. So this also happens with Henry VIII. Henry VIII came to the throne after his very, very tyrannical and paranoid father, who basically kept his court in a state of repression and terror. And so his young son, who was very handsome and very athletic and very charismatic, came to the throne, and people just were jubilant. Yes, the winter times are over. We have a spring of new power and princehood. And God, my lighting sucks. I'm really sorry about that. We have this great new young king, and he is charismatic, and he is educated and smart and a wonderful prince, and he's everything a prince should be. But Henry VIII was also a tyrant. He was just as much of a tyrant as his father. He was in some ways less skilled at it, but in some ways he was also just more charismatic, so it hid what he was doing. And also he tended to play less of a systematic and calculated game and more of a, you've pissed me off in some way and I'm going to have you executed. I'm going to find a way to have you executed. So it's a different kind of terror. But he also, basically made his court into one long, really showy, sophisticated party. So that hid that particular side of him for a while from a lot of his courtiers who really wanted him to be a good king, and wanted to not, live in terror and fear and paranoia anymore. So this is where that narrative of the illness can come in and help these people protect themselves psychologically from being so very wrong. Henry VIII ended up in a very nasty jousting accident, and this is when his personality changed. So, it is definitely more than possible, in fact probable, that he definitely did get nastier and meaner and more angry and cranky after this accident. Probably not because he had a head wound, but probably because he did have some unhealing, some wounds in his legs that didn't heal, and they were painful and stinking and debilitating, and suddenly he couldn't be the grand athlete anymore, and he was in pain, and that made him cranky. Because it would make me cranky. It made most of us cranky. And it made him, not able to keep up this image of himself as athletic too, which is a hit to his very his ego, and he had a very large and fragile ego. But we do know that he certainly did some of his really awful, nasty things before the accident, and he ripped his country out of the Catholic Church before the accident. He had this accident while he was married to Anne Boleyn. And he certainly did some really nasty, cruel, vindictive things before that accident. People lost their heads because of his nasty, cruel, vindictive things before that accident. But that accident allowed chroniclers and allowed diarists and allowed people in his court to say, oh, it was all going so well. He was still a good king until that accident, and it's so sad because he changed, and I wasn't wrong about him. He changed. It's a way of protecting yourself from being wrong, and from being wrong about something so important and about someone so dangerous to you. It's psychologically protective. It allows you to make that leap and stop trying to say, oh, he's not really that bad. It allows you to have a breaking point. But it also just protects you psychologically from being wrong, which is a hard thing to face. So what does this mean for writers? As always, that's our question. This is an interesting thought exercise, that this is a thing that you can look at history and see how people try to shield themselves from having been wrong, and how this has come up twice. And yes, I am comparing Henry VIII to Caligula because I hate Henry VIII. But it's also, useful for writers because you might want to think about how, if you have that kind of tyrant, how people might have looked at him at the beginning. How he might have been seen as the glorious, or she as the glorious king or prince or queen, or whatever they were in this story, how they might have looked at the beginning, and how people are trying to deal with the fact that they were wrong about that, and what kind of narratives you're going to get from people who are struggling to articulate that perhaps this person that they had such high hopes for is terrible and dangerous and ruining their lives and destroying what they loved and what they valued and what they hold dear. That this person that they once may have even worshipped as a god is destroying everything. So, my name is Anna Fisher. This is my YouTube channel. My social media links are in the description below. If you enjoyed this video or found it useful, please consider liking this video and subscribing to my channel and hitting that little notification bell so that YouTube tells you when I've next uploaded a video. And possibly even leaving me a comment, which would be lovely. I hope you had a wonderful day so far. If it hasn't been lovely so far, I hope it gets better soon. And I hope to see you in the next video. Bye-bye for now. Bye!